My wife shaved my whole head bald the day before a work presentation, while telling her entire family I was a freeloading joke who didn't pay for anything. So, I gave her the wish. My wife Trina and I were together for 5 years and married for 2. When I first met her family, I thought they were great. Her parents had everyone over every other Sunday for dinner. Her brother Ray and his wife Leah were always there. It was loud and there was always too much food and I liked it. The problem started when Trina figured out that making fun of me got her the most attention at those dinners. It started small. She'd tell a story about me putting too much salt in something I cooked and everyone would laugh. Then she'd bring up something dumb I did at home and everyone would crack up. I didn't mind at first, but it stopped being stories and started being setups. She switched my body wash with one that turned my skin orange before a Sunday dinner. I showed up looking like I'd been inside a tanning bed for a week and her whole family couldn't stop. Her mom covered her mouth. Her brother was bent over the table. Trina sat there grinning like she'd won something. I asked her that night and she said I needed to learn to take a joke. The next month she told me we were going to a casual cookout at her parents' place. I showed up in shorts and a t-shirt and everyone else was dressed up because it was actually her dad's birthday dinner. Trina said she forgot to tell me and then walked off laughing with her mom about it. I heard them. Then came the night that ended everything. I take allergy medicine in the spring that knocks me out cold. She knew that. She waited until I was completely asleep and shaved my head. All of it. I woke up Sunday morning and touched my head and there was nothing there. I went to the bathroom and looked. Completely bald. She came in behind me still in her pajamas already on the phone. She told whoever was on the other end, he just saw it and I could hear laughing through the speaker. I asked her what she did. She said, "Relax. It's just hair. It'll grow back." I had a presentation at work on Monday. She knew that too. Her brother Ray came over that afternoon with Leah just to see it in person. Ray walked in, looked at my head, and started clapping. Trina stood behind me smiling. Leah didn't laugh. She looked at me and then looked at the floor. That was the only reaction that week that told me I wasn't losing my mind. The next Sunday, her mom had a hat waiting for me on the table as a gag gift. Her dad said I looked better this way. Trina told the whole table she should have done it sooner. I sat there and ate my food. The following week, Leah asked me to help move some furniture at her place. When we were alone, she told me something that changed everything. She said Trina had been telling the family I didn't contribute at home, that I didn't pay for anything, that she covered all the bills, that I was basically coasting. She told her parents she paid for their home renovation last year. She told Ray she bought the car he'd been driving. She told her mom she covered her dental work out of pocket. I paid for all of it, every single thing. I wrote the checks, I made the transfers. Trina never picked up a single extra shift in her life. I never said anything because they were my family too, and I didn't need credit for helping. But Trina told them it was all her. I didn't confront Trina. I waited. 2 weeks later, it was her parents' anniversary dinner. The whole family was there. After dessert, her dad stood up and gave a speech. He thanked everyone for coming. Then he looked at Trina and got emotional. He said he was grateful she paid for the remodel because he and her mom never could have afforded it on their own. He said she helped Ray get back on his feet with the car. He said she took care of her mom when they needed it most. I watched Trina nod and smile and accept every word like she earned it. When her dad finished, everyone clapped. Then he looked right at me and said, "And you're a lucky man." I looked at Trina. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I said, "I paid for the remodel." Her dad stopped. The whole table went quiet. Trina's fork hit her plate. I had every receipt, every bank statement, every transfer confirmation saved on my phone, organized the night before because I knew this dinner was coming and I knew her dad would give that speech. Trina thought I was going to sit there and smile like I always did. Nora looked at Trina. Tariq looked at me. Nobody was laughing now. I stood up slowly. My chair scraped against the floor and it sounded too loud in that quiet room. Trina forced a laugh and said, "He's joking. Sit down." But I didn't sit down. Tariq turned to face me fully. He said, "What do you mean you paid for the remodel?" His voice was calm but confused. I pulled out my phone and said, "I mean I wrote the check. I have the receipt right here." I turned the screen toward him. Tariq reached out and took it from my hand. He brought it close to his face and I watched his eyes move across the screen. It was the bank transfer confirmation for the renovation. The date was right there. The amount was right there. And the account holder name at the top was mine. Not Trina's. Not a joint account. Mine. Tariq read it once and then again. Then he sat back down slowly, like his legs decided they were done holding him up. He looked at Trina and his face wasn't angry yet. It was something worse. Confused and hurt at the same time, like he was looking at someone he didn't recognize. He said, "What is this?" Trina looked at me and said, "That doesn't prove anything. We share accounts." I shook my head. "No, we don't. We never have. You insisted on keeping everything separate from day one. You said you watched your friend go through a messy split and you never wanted your money mixed up with someone else's. Those were your exact words." Trina's jaw tightened. She didn't have a follow-up because it was true and she knew I remembered. Nora looked at Trina and her voice was quiet but firm. She said, "Is that true? You don't share accounts?" Trina didn't answer her mom. She just stared at the table. That silence told everyone more than any answer would have. I swiped to the next screenshot, the car payment. Ray had been driving around in that car for over a year, thinking his sister made some huge sacrifice for him. I turned the phone so the whole table could see it and said, "This is the payment for Ray's car." Ray leaned in. The money, every dollar of it, came straight out of my personal checking account. My name, my bank, my money. Ray stared at the screen for a long time. Then he looked up at Trina. The guy who clapped at my bald head was gone. He looked like someone just told him the ground under his feet wasn't real. He said, "You told me you took out a personal loan for this. You told me you went to the bank and signed papers. You told me I didn't need to worry about it." Trina said nothing. She just sat there with her hands in her lap and let the silence fill the space where her lie used to be. I swiped to the next screenshot. The dental bill for Nora, the full amount, paid from my checking account, the provider's office, the date of service, my name right at the top. I held the phone out so Nora could see it and didn't say anything. I just let her read it. Nora looked at the screen and her hand went up to her mouth slowly. Her eyes got wet and she whispered, "You paid for my teeth?" Her voice was so small it barely made it across the table. I nodded. The proof was right there and Nora knew her own dental bills. She knew the amount. She knew the dates. And now she knew it was never her daughter who covered it. It was me, the guy she handed a gag hat to at Sunday dinner. Trina pushed her chair back hard and stood up halfway. She said, "This is ridiculous. You're embarrassing yourself." She looked around the table trying to find someone who would back her up, but nobody did. Tariq was staring at the table with his hands flat against it. Nora still had her hand over her mouth mouth with tears running down her face. Ray was completely still with his eyes locked on Trina like he was seeing her for the very first time. Tariq looked up at Trina and his voice was low and steady, but I could hear the shake underneath it. He said, "Did you pay for any of this?" Simple, direct. Trina swallowed. She said, "I contributed." Two words that meant nothing. I said, "Name one thing." Her mouth opened but nothing came out. I said it again. "Name one thing you paid for, Trina. One receipt, one transfer, one check, anything." She just stood there. The silence stretched out and it was the loudest thing in the room. Tariq watched her not answer and something broke in his face. He said, "I stood up and thanked you in front of everyone. I got emotional. I told this whole table how proud I was of my daughter. And none of it was true?" Trina's chin dipped, but she said nothing. Nora turned in her chair and her voice was shaking. She said, "I called my friends and told them my daughter paid for my dental work. I bragged about you, Trina. I told my book club. I told the women at church." She pointed at the phone on the table. "There's a bank statement right there with his name on it. How is he twisting it?" Ray pushed his chair back and walked over to the window. He stood there with his back to all of us. He said, "I felt guilty for a whole year because I thought my sister bailed me out. I brought you groceries every week. I mowed your lawn. I fixed stuff on weekends because I thought I owed you for the car." Trina straightened up and said, "You did owe me. I'm your sister." Ray turned around from the window. His face was hard. Not angry exactly, but done. Like something inside him had been switched off. He said, "For what?" Two words. And Trina had nothing. Everyone was tired. Nora was wiping her face with a napkin. Tariq was slumped in his chair looking 10 years older than he did an hour ago. And Trina could see her whole family pulling away from her, so she changed. Her shoulders dropped. Her face softened. When she spoke, her voice was small and shaky. She said, "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just wanted you all to be proud of me. I just wanted to feel like I mattered." For a second, it actually worked. Nora reached across and put her hand on Trina's arm. Tariq exhaled. Even Ray uncrossed his arms. I could feel the whole thing slipping. Another 30 seconds and Nora would be hugging her, and by next Sunday they'd be at this same table pretending none of it happened while I went back to being the punchline. I looked at Trina and said, "Trina, tell them about my head." The softness in the room disappeared, like someone flipped a switch. Nora's hand stayed on Trina's arm, but her fingers stopped moving. Tariq looked up at me. He said, "What about his head?" Trina's jaw tightened and her eyes went sharp. She said, "That was a joke." Flat, like she was reading it off a card. I shook my head slowly. I said, "She shaved my head while I was asleep the night before a work presentation. I take allergy medicine that knocks me out, and she knew that. She waited until I was completely out and shaved everything off. And when I woke up and found out she was already on the phone. Before I even saw myself in the mirror, she had called someone to tell them. She set the whole thing up. The room didn't move. Nobody breathed. I watched Nora's hand slide off Trina's arm and drop back into her own lap, like Trina's skin had burned her. Tariq was looking at Trina now with something worse than anger. Shame. Not for himself. For her. For what she had done and who she had become while he wasn't paying attention. Trina stood there with no one touching her. No one reaching for her. No one ready to forgive. The sympathy she had built up in 30 seconds was gone, and it wasn't coming back. She found someone else to blame. Trina's eyes moved across the room and landed exactly where I knew they would. She turned toward Leah so fast her chair bumped the table and the glasses rattled. She pointed right at her and said, "You told him, didn't you? You went behind my back and put all of this in his head." Leah didn't flinch. She sat at the end of the table with her hands folded and looked Trina right in the face. Her voice was calm and steady. She said, "I told him the truth." Trina let out a laugh with no humor in it. She said, "You've been jealous of me since the day you married Ray. You've always wanted to tear this family apart. This isn't about him. This is about you finally getting your chance to blow everything up." Ray stepped forward and his voice was hard. He said, "Don't talk to my wife like that." Tariq spoke from his chair without standing up, without raising his voice. He just said, "Trina, sit down." It was the voice of a dad who was done, not asking, telling. Trina turned to her father and her voice dropped into something between a whisper and a plea. She said, "Dad, she's been whispering behind my back for months. Ask her how long she's known about this. Ask her why she waited." And that was smart, because the question wasn't really about Leah. It was about putting doubt in the room. Nora looked at Leah and said, "How long have you known about this, Leah?" Leah placed her hands flat on the table. She said, "About 6 months. I saw a bank notification on his phone by accident when we were moving furniture. I wasn't snooping. It lit up on the counter and the amount matched something Trina had told us she paid for. I didn't want to cause problems or start something I couldn't take back. But the more I watched, the more it didn't add up, and I couldn't stay quiet anymore." Nora said, "6 months and you didn't tell us?" And Trina saw the crack and went right for it. She said, "See?" She sat on it. For 6 months, she walked into this house and smiled at all of us, and she knew the whole time. She waited for the perfect moment. That's not honesty, Mom. That's strategy. I watched the room tilt. Nora was looking at Leah with doubt in her eyes. Ray looked torn apart. Trina was gaining ground. I spoke up and made sure every person in that room heard me. I said, "Leah is the only person in this family who treated me like a human being." The room went still. I kept going. "She's the only one who didn't laugh when Trina shaved my head. Every single one of you thought it was great. You brought me hats. You told me I looked better. You clapped." I looked at Ray when I said that last word, and he looked away. Leah looked at the floor that day because she was ashamed for me. She was the only one in this room who felt something when that happened. Don't punish her for being the only honest person here. She didn't blow up this family. The lies blew up this family, and she's not the one who told them. Nora slowly pulled her gaze from Leah and turned it back to Trina. Tariq did the same. Ray seemed to settle. He looked at Leah and some of that torn expression smoothed out. Trina looked at me and said, "So you've been planning this the whole time? Planning how to humiliate me in front of my own family?" She said it like she was the victim. I looked at her and didn't raise my voice. I said, "No, I've been waiting for you to stop." And that was the truth. Trina was standing there with no one willing to laugh for her, and for the first time since I'd known her, she had absolutely nothing to say. She grabbed her purse off the back of her chair and said, "Fine, you all want to believe him over me? I'm done. I'm leaving and I'm not coming back." She looked straight at me and said, "And you can find somewhere else to sleep tonight because I'm changing the locks." Tariq said, "Trina, sit down. Nobody is leaving until we finish this." Trina turned on her heel and walked toward the front door. Her shoes clicked on the hardwood floor. Tariq called her name again, but she kept walking. She got to the door and reached for the knob, and that's when Nora spoke. Nora had been sitting there through all of it, crying, squeezing her own hands, trying to hold herself together. But when Trina's fingers wrapped around that doorknob, something in Nora clicked into place. Her voice came out steady, and it cut through the room like it was the only sound that mattered. She said, "If you walk out that door right now, you're telling us everything he said is true." Trina stopped. Her hand was on the doorknob. She didn't turn it. She didn't turn around. She just stood there frozen with her back to all of us. Ray spoke. His voice was empty, tired. He said, "Just answer one question." Trina still didn't turn around. Ray said, "Did you pay for any of it? Yes or no?" Trina's head dropped forward. She said, "You don't understand what it's like being the one everyone expects to hold things together." Ray said, "That's not a yes or no." Every person in that room was waiting. Trina turned around slowly. Her hand fell off the doorknob. Her eyes were red and her makeup had smeared under her left eye. She looked at Ray first, then at her parents, then at the floor, and then she said, "No, I didn't pay for any of it. Are you happy now?" She almost spit the last part, like admitting the truth was something we did to her. Nora covered her face with both hands. Tariq put his head in his hands. Ray shook his head slow, side to side. And Trina, standing by the door with her confession hanging in the air, looked at her family falling apart and did the only thing she had left. She tried to make it matter less. She said, "But I'm the one who keeps this family close. I'm the one who plans the dinners and makes sure everyone shows up. I'm the one who calls mom every morning. That has to count for something." I looked at Trina and kept my voice level. I said, "You kept this family close by turning me into entertainment. Every dinner, every joke, every prank. You made them laugh at me so they'd love you. And then you took credit for my money so they'd respect you. You didn't keep this family together, Trina. You used me to do it. You used my money to buy their respect, and you used my dignity to buy their laughs. That's not holding a family together. That's performing for an audience, and I was your prop." Trina looked at me. For the first time since I'd known her, she had no comeback. No spin, no angle, no version of herself to try on. Nothing left to throw at it. Tariq was the first one to move. He pushed himself up from his chair and stopped right in front of me. His voice was shaking. He said, "I called you lucky. I stood in front of my whole family and said you were lucky to have her." He looked me in the face and said, "I'm sorry, son. I didn't know." He held out his hand. I thought about all the Sunday dinners where he sat at the head of that table and laughed while Trina made me the joke. But he didn't know. Trina made sure he didn't know. She built a world for her family to live in, and every wall of it was made of lies. I reached out and shook his hand. He held on a second longer than a normal handshake and said, "You're a good man, better than we deserved." His voice cracked on that last word. Nora came next. She stopped in front of me, and her bottom lip was shaking. She said, "I gave you that hat." She almost laughed when she said it, but it turned into something closer to a sob. I thought it was funny because Trina told us you two laughed about it at home. You made us part of it. You made us cruel, and we didn't even know. She put her hand on my arm for just a second, squeezed it once, and walked back to her chair. Then Ray came. He stopped in front of me and just stood there looking at me with an expression I'd never seen on his face. He said, "I clapped when I saw your head. I walked into your house and I clapped." His voice broke right in the middle of that sentence. He pressed his hand against his mouth for a second and then kept going. "I'm sorry, man. I was laughing at you and you were the one paying for my car. I was laughing at you while you were taking care of my family." He shook his head. Then he turned toward Trina and said, "I don't even know who you are right now. Quiet, just honest." He walked back to where Leah was sitting and put his hand on her shoulder, and she reached up and covered his hand with hers. Leah stood up and walked over to me. She stopped next to me and put her hand on my shoulder and said quietly, "Just for me, you didn't deserve any of it." 4 words. They hit me harder than anything else that had been said all night. Not to win an argument, just the truth. I nodded and let that be enough. Then I reached into my jacket pocket. The paper had been there all night, folded in half, waiting. I had put it there before I left the house, before I drove to this dinner knowing exactly how it was going to end. I walked over to where Trina was standing and set it on the table in front of her. Gently, not a slam, just placed it there. I looked at Trina and said, "You always told me you wished I'd just disappear so you could be the star. That's your wish, Trina. Those are divorce papers. You can have all the attention you want now. I'm done being your punchline." Trina stared at the paper, then she picked it up. Her hands were shaking so bad it rattled in her fingers. She unfolded it slowly, and I watched her face change one more time. Not to sadness, not to anger, to fear. The kind you get when you realize the thing you thought would never happen is already done. She looked up at me and said, "You can't do this." I said, "You shaved my head in my sleep, Trina. You lied to your family for years. You took credit for every dollar I ever gave, and you smiled while you did it." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I turned and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard chairs push back. Leah and Ray both stood, not to follow me, not to stop me, just to stand. Like sitting down while I walked out didn't feel right. I looked back one last time. Tariq was standing behind his chair with both hands on the back of it, staring at the tablecloth. Nora was sitting with the napkin pressed to her face, shoulders still. Ray was standing next to Leah, his hand on her back, and Trina was at the other end of the room holding the divorce papers in both hands with tears running down her face, standing completely alone. Nobody was laughing. It was just a click, a small, quiet sound. And then, for the first time in 2 years, the room behind me was completely silent.